Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of the Search Off the Record podcast. Our plan is to talk a bit about what's happening at Google Search, how things work behind the scenes, and who knows, maybe have some fun along the way. My name is John Mueller. I'm a search advocate on the search relations team here at Google in Switzerland. I'm joined today by Martin and Gary, both also on the search relations team. And we have a special guest today, Mariya. Mariya is a product manager on the search team. Mariya, for those that don't know you yet, could you introduce yourself briefly?
Yes.
That was brief.
This is the briefest I can do.
Can you elaborate a little more?
Sure. So I'm Mariya, and I'm also based here in Zurich. And even though I haven't seen you guys in a really long time, we work together in our little Couchgate, remember? And I work on something called SiteKit.
SiteKit, nice. What is SiteKit?
I thought you'd never ask, Martin. SiteKit is super exciting. So if you imagine that you have something that you want to share online or you want to sell something online, especially over the past year, online has been pretty much the only way to do that, right? So imagine you're a beekeeper and you want to find clients for your honey. You set up a site, but you don't really know how to get started. Like you're pretty good at making honey, but you're not good at websites. And so it can be really overwhelming with so many tools and complicated dashboards to figure out what to do. So that's why we built SiteKit. It's an open source plugin, free for WordPress, maintained and built and continued to be developed by Google. And it's a way for you, basically as a site owner, to get the most relevant of Google's tools directly in your dashboard. So you don't need to go anywhere else. You log into your site, it's already there. And it has information from analytics, from Search Console, from page speed insights. So it tries to show you everything about your site, how people found you, how long they stayed on your pages, how fast your pages are. And if you choose to make money with AdSense, also how much money you make with AdSense. So think about it a little bit like Swiss Army knife of Google products directly in your site. And it's really good for people that are kind of focused on their business and they are on WordPress to kind of promote their business, but they don't want to deal with super technical things. So one person that I recently talked to online is a ski teacher, and he started a site to share his favorite destinations in Colorado and also to teach parents how to teach their kids how to ski. And he had put some AdSense on his site, and he was using SiteKit especially to understand who was coming to his site and how to grow it. And he was able, over the course of a year, to make enough money to buy himself a super fancy pair of skis. So that's the kind of thing that SiteKit is good for. It helps you understand what's going on at a glance and make decisions how to improve your site. And I'm super excited about having it on WordPress. I hope that we can build something for other platforms as well in the future.
Ooh, nice. I nearly forgot that you are actually a beekeeper. How are your bees doing?
My bees are currently sleeping.
Aww.
They made a little bowl around the queen, and they basically flip their wings to keep the temperature around her very stable. And so they have turned into a little air conditioner for her. And we're going to start feeding them sugar very soon because the temperatures are going up.
Oh, that is amazing. I think we're done here, aren't we? Like, that's the pinnacle of this podcast, probably. Like, that's the best episode so far. No?
More.
Right.
So, Mariya, is SiteKit like an SEO tool? Does it help you to rank better? Or how would you kind of classify this?
SiteKit is definitely helping you rank better when it's a leap year and only on full moons. You will experience about 0.75% improvement in your average position. But other than that, essentially, the goal of SiteKit is to make things simple for you. So it's not necessarily an SEO tool. The goal is to bring everything that you need from Google in one place. So yeah, it can help you with SEO. You can see what are the most popular queries. You can see which are the most popular pages from your site. Do these things match? Should you be writing about something else? So in that sense, you can take some decisions, but it's not explicitly meant as an SEO tool.
Okay. So it kind of makes all of these other tools a little bit easier to understand. I don't know. When I go into analytics, it's always so overwhelming. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad to get out of there as quickly as possible. But it's still useful to get some information there. So I guess it makes some of those things a little bit easier to understand.
Yeah, we filtered out almost everything. So you will see very few numbers and they're very big. So there is little information on the dashboard and hopefully only the important stuff. So you don't have to get lost in reports. But if you did want to dive deeper, there are links that can take you to analytics, to Search Console, to AdSense, or whatever you have activated, so you can see all the details if you wanted to. Or if there's someone helping you with your site, you could help them and send them there so they can see the details.
So cool. And since WordPress is an open source tool, I guess, or platform, or CMS, I don't know what you call it.
A magic place.
Open source magic place. Sitekit is also open source, or is this like some secret Google box that we just add on top?
Nope. Everything is open source. All the development happens on GitHub. Everyone can go and complain or add suggestions and comment and see what we're doing. And we say, okay, we're going to do this in the next 2 weeks. We have a release. Then we publish exactly what we changed. So it's super transparent and it's very clear what's going on. And I love that about it because everyone can come and see what we're doing.
And you and the other maintainers are really, really friendly. I think, if I remember correctly, like a bazillion years ago, Felix, who's also working with you, convinced me to actually like fix something. And then I made a tiny little contribution to the plugin. Oh, man. I think that was after we were all in Berlin in 2019 for the WordCamp. And I think, didn't you like announce something?
What?
Yeah, I know. We traveled. Don't
People
you remember?
People together in a place?
In a closed space in Berlin. That was amazing.
Man.
That was good stuff. Wasn't it also where you announced the developer preview or the developer beta for Sitekit or something? Because I think we had a booth there.
Yeah, we had a booth and we announced it. And many people installed it, even though it was developer beta. And here we are now, almost 2 years later, with more than 1 million active users for the stable release. So it's pretty exciting to see where we're going.
Wow.
Awesome. That's really cool. I remember it was my first WordCamp, and I was so excited for the positive vibe in the community and how like everyone was nice and friendly, which is not true for all communities, I guess. I mean, they do have their controversial moments, right? I think when Gutenberg launched, I remember that Felix, for instance, was super excited about it. And other people were like, ooh, no, we don't think that's a good thing. And I think this has kind of been established now that it's a good thing. And it's based on web components. And that made me interested. And that's why I was kind of interested to follow like how they're doing stuff. Yeah.
What's a web component?
Oh, web components are basically a bunch of standards that allow you to make your own HTML elements. So you can basically within WordPress build like different things like, I don't know, an image carousel or whatever as a component so that you can use it as an HTML tag as if it would be a normal HTML tag, you know, like a link or a button or text input. You can build your own kind of elements like a tab box or, as I said, an image carousel or whatnot. And you don't have to do this with weird hacks. You do it with mechanisms that are built into the browser, into the web platform. And that's actually quite a cool thing to do, I think.
So it's kind of like a Java applet for HTML pages?
No, it's not, because a Java applet towards the web is a black box and it's an enclosed separate thing that is built with different technologies. Web components are really just inside the browser. And if you look at things like input elements, for instance, or video element, for instance, on a web page, all of these are, if you inspect the user agent shadow DOM, all of that is actually built with web components. So browsers are using web components, at least Chrome, I'm not sure about the others, are using web components to build normal HTML components on top of each other. So that's kind of cool.
So cool. So you could take like an existing web components library and just add the HTML tags to your pages and use it like that?
Yeah. It does have a few challenges with a few tools like Rendertron, which is something that I maintain, is having a bit of a hard time in actually rendering what's inside a shadow DOM, which is unfortunate because our renderer at Google Search actually does this. So in rendering, we can actually see the content inside web components. In Rendertron, we are struggling with that at the moment. So that's an interesting challenge that I hope to actually address this year. So we'll see how that goes.
So by the content within the shadow DOM, you mean kind of like if you have a web component for a calendar that you'd be able to see the individual days.
Yeah.
Is it that?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Like all the components that you build your component from. So let's say like it's an image carousel, then you have like the different images and maybe like some buttons to go to the next and previous image. And you don't want the outside website to accidentally do something with it. If like, for instance, the outside website says, oh, all the buttons need to be pink. and then also really, really large. Then somehow magically the component buttons inside the carousel get really big and pink. That might look really, really weird. So you want to have like some sort of isolation layer, kind of like a border that can't be easily crossed. And that's what a shadow DOM provides, basically a black box towards the outside.
So cool. And that all works in Google Search, you said? Or is that also challenging?
That works in Google Search. We are doing that quite well in the rendering service, web rendering service more specifically. But yeah, I'm having a hard time replicating that behavior in Puppeteer and thus in Rendertron.
So cool. Okay.
Why? Or how so?
Oh, that's a really good question. It turns out that different web components libraries are using these things slightly differently. And how do I put this nicely? Developers are surprisingly creative when it comes to using things. And we are using a few very clever tricks in the web rendering service that are not publicly documented and are actually not really in the public versions either. That's basically custom patches. There is a feature that I think looks promising to do that, which allows you to actually traverse the Shadow DOM boundary and then also extract the internals. But I haven't really tested this. And the last time I tested it, there were a bunch of developers that worked with the web component standards in ways that would break even that mechanism. So I'm like, there must be a better way. So yeah, we'll see if we can open source more of the things that we do.
But then if you can descend into the Shadow DOM, then isn't that a fault of how Shadow DOM is set up? I mean, the reason you have a Shadow DOM is to not let third parties to descend into them.
That's a very good point. And it's interesting to see that this was a note coming from Apple in the standardization process. So when the Shadow DOM standard was proposed, there were basically like the other vendors that said like, yeah, no, it's fine. There should be an easy way to cross the Shadow DOM border so that you can still customize the styles of a web component, because that would be the easiest way to provide that. And also there was like a shadow pseudo selector in CSS and all that kind of stuff. But then Apple said, no. We think it is better to have the option to say if a userland thing, so like if a website owner can cross into the Shadow DOM or not. So now there is the opportunity to create open or closed Shadow DOMs to specifically choose as the web component author if you would allow crossing the Shadow DOM border or not. And the thing is, the Shadow DOM border is not a security feature. It is sheer isolation for the sake of avoiding accidental manipulation of elements inside the web component. I think from the composability standpoint, it is good if you can cross the shadow border, but you have to do so consciously. You shouldn't be accidentally ending up within a Shadow DOM, but having the opportunity to deliberately do that is, I think, fine.
This all sounds like a science fiction movie, Martin.
Yeah, I was just going to say cross into the shadow border, like Mordor or something.
Yes.
Is there also a ring involved?
Well, maybe. There's like the hover ring, I think.
So it's not like a sandbox that, for example, extensions function in, more like, I don't even know, like a controlled border.
I would consider it like, it's not a wall, it's a curtain, right? You can open the curtain and then look what's behind, but a wall is a relatively rigid thing. Unless there's like a window or a door, you can't necessarily easily traverse it. And that's basically how I think about it. So if I basically say like all the objects I see, I want to paint them all red. If there isn't a set of other objects behind the curtain, I wouldn't see them, so I wouldn't paint them red. But if I wanted to, I can draw the curtain to the side and then still like paint all the objects behind it red.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Fine. I'll accept it.
That's very nice of you. That's great. I'm very happy to hear that.
I know, I get it a lot.
You're a gift that keeps on giving, Gary.
I don't get that a lot.
So I guess we could index the tokens in the Shadow DOM, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
I think that was my cue.
Very subtle.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then I will talk. One of the last episodes that we had, I was talking about indexing, and we have different kinds of storages that we use based on how often we think that documents indexed in those tiers would be served. But we haven't talked about the serving index, which is slightly less abstract than what we were talking about in a past episode. And the serving index is actually what is in our data centers and from where people get their search results. on their screens. And I think it's not that much of an interesting topic. It's just I want to cover it before we actually move into serving, because it feels that if I don't, then people might misunderstand things, which would never happen ever on the internet. So the serving index, that's essentially a lot of index shards that were pushed by caffeine into our serving data centers. I don't remember the exact number of data centers that we have for serving web search, well, search in general, but it's over 10. And each of these data centers would get, well, between 10 and 15 somewhere. And each of these data centers would get the index shards. And each of these index shards would contain the documents that we have indexed. Now, these documents are not actually the things that we grabbed from a URL. They are broken down into tokens. Basically, we tokenize them because we don't actually need all the fluff that comes with the HTML. Like, for example, script tags, like why would we want to index those tokens, those keywords or key phrases from pages? We just don't need them. Certain HTML elements we do need because reasons I will not say.
Emojis, right? We need them too.
Yeah, we need them. Those are very important indeed. So we will keep certain HTML elements. We will keep the actual words that appear on the page and their positions on the page, because that's also important, as we've said a number of times before. And then these index shards are distributed among the data centers. Each data center will have a duplicate of the shards because that's how it should be. So each data center can serve relatively the same documents as results if needed. Of course, that doesn't always happen. Like sometimes some shard might lag behind in a data center, and then interesting things can happen. Like you search for something, let's say cookies, and then Martin also searches for cookies and they get completely different results. And that's sometimes because we are querying different data centers and the index shards are different between those data centers that we are querying. Now, the index shards are, I like to think of them as RAR part files, like a packaged part file. I keep bringing this up, but back in the 90s, for example, when we were installing Doom or Quake or Age of Empires, for example, then we got these floppy disks. And I remember that.
Yes, Martin, floppy disk. Woohoo!
No, Martin, sit down. Like, for example, Age of Empires came on 30-something floppy disks. Doom came on, I think, 12. Then Diablo 1 that came on 50-something. So you had to insert each floppy disk into your floppy drive, copy over the files that you found there, and then unite them. And then you would have the final executable that you would use to run your game. And the index shards are not so dissimilar from that conceptually. They are essentially a part of the index altogether, forming the entirety of the index. We have many index shards in many data centers. I don't know the number, but order of thousands or tens of thousands even. And that poses a challenge. The challenge is that you have to find fast documents in those index shards. And if you think about it, when you search for something, you get the results under 1 second. Now, if you have to look in all index shards for every query, you are not going to deliver results in under 1 second, because even the smallest index shards would be several megabytes big, and going through all the records that you have in a shard will take time. And to help serving identifying the index shard that needs to be queried, we have something called shard indexes, which identifies the shards for certain queries, which is basically a map between the keywords that we encountered or token that we encountered on pages mapped to the index shard number or identifier. But that will not be enough to seek inside the index shard. For that, we need new map, which is what we call the posting list. And that identifies the document ID that contained a certain keyword, for example. Like if you search for oatmeal cookies, for example, then the posting list would tell us that the word oatmeal appears in the documents 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then cookies would appear in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we would send the intersection of the two up to serving. Now, this is oversimplified, and there are other processes that take place, like, for example, the tokenization itself, which can be a challenge in certain languages. But conceptually, this is how we actually build our serving index.
So cool. So it's kind of like the index in the back of a book where you see the page number, and then on that page with the posting list, you figure out, oh, it's line 17 or something like that.
Yeah, that's literally what it is. And if I remember correctly, that's where the idea came from, actually.
Woohoo. Okay. So cool. And they're called sharks because they are like swimming in the pipeline of the internet.
I think, no. It's with a D, not with a K. Shards.
Oh, shards. Oh, okay.
That sounds like a JRPG.
Why are you hurting my brain like this?
So sorry. Not sorry.
That sounds like a thing from a JRPG. Like, oh, you have to bring all the shards from this crystal together, and then you will, I don't know, free the princess that has been frozen inside the crystal. Ding.
I keep thinking of that data center that we have in Finland where we cool the data center with water from the ocean there. So it's like we're sending the sharks up there and then they go into the data center and provide search results for all of Finland.
I seriously want indexing shards.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that's not how it works, but I think the sharks don't contribute anything to cooling our data centers, but I might be wrong.
They are at least a threat for the internet because they bite the cables.
Yeah, that's true. We actually had failures due to sharks biting the underwater cables, I think close to Egypt, Alexandria, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. So the sharks were holding back the shards. Okay. So cool. I love all of this indexing stuff. It's like almost like science fiction as well, especially the names. I don't know where people come up with this stuff. So cool. Anyway, moving back to SiteKit, which hopefully doesn't have too many sharks. Where can people find SiteKit, Mariya?
Now you've let the cat out of the bag, John. SiteKit essentially turns your site into sharks and then sends it to the index. But let's just keep this between ourselves here. Well, there is a website, sitekit.withgoogle.com. And also you can easily find SiteKit if you search for Google SiteKit or Google Analytics or something like this in the WordPress plugin repository. So that's the two easiest ways to find it.
So cool. And if you wanted to stay on top of all of the algorithms that are launching in SiteKit, where's a good place to kind of watch for the changes there?
There is a blog on the same site that I just mentioned, sitekit.withgoogle.com. And sometimes when there's something especially exciting, we also might do a guest post on the Search Central blog. So there too might be a good place to keep an eye.
So cool. Yeah, I think I installed the beta version on my blog at some point, but I don't know if I actually got the final version, which maybe I should install after all, or maybe I should, I don't know, post something on my blog at some point. Speaking of blogs, how is that recipe blog going, Gary?
I mean, we still have things to finish on dev side with one site move. So I'm focusing on that. It's getting a little painful because we have to import all the language blogs that we have from way too many locations on Blogspot or Blogger. And fortunately, they are all using slightly different templates somehow, which makes parsing very, very exciting. It's great.
Okay. So it's kind of like a disconnected collection of shards.
And we have a full circle.
Sidekid sharks do 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 do. Sidekid sharks do 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 do.
Martin.
I want to quit.
Okay, I think maybe we should wrap it up here before things get completely out of hand. Thank you all for joining us here, folks. And thanks for dropping by and chatting with us, Mariya. I hope you found this as insightful and useful as I found it.
In Sharkful.
In Sharkful, yeah.
Oh.
Shardful. Anyway, we've been having fun with these podcast episodes, and I hope you, the listener, has been finding them both entertaining and insightful as well. And regardless of how you're liking these, please let us know and tell us if there are any topics that we should be covering slightly differently or going into more detail. You're welcome to drop us a note anywhere you can leave feedback on podcasts, or maybe just contact us on Twitter directly, or who knows, at some virtual event at some time. We'll see. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe and share these podcast episodes with other people if you find them useful. Thanks a lot, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
A la vida.